Good morning and welcome back to Evita at the Rhythm of My Heart. Thank you so much for joining me and Happy New Year. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share my videos so that I can continue to grow this channel and share these wonderful recipes with you. Today, I'm going to answer a request from a subscriber, Mildred. Mildred, thank you so much for your request. Mildred asked if I could show a video of a shrunken recipe of our sofrito. What is sofrito? Sofrito in Puerto Rican cooking, and in some cases Santo Domingo or Dominican Republic and also Cuba, is most of the basis of our dishes, and it's usually prepared using vegetables and herbs such as cilantro, onions, peppers, and many more. So I'm going to take you on this video on a step-by-step how to make our sofrito base on a smaller batch. So stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to go ahead and get started with this great and delicious sofrito base. Let me just point out that no two sofrito recipes are ever the same, and the variation comes from the regions, the different regions where we come from, where we live currently, as well as who taught us how to make our sofrito. So I'm going to give you the basic ingredients of the sofrito that I use, and like I said, some of us get very creative and you can add more or less of an ingredient. There is no basic recipe, so you can get as creative and as adventurous as you like. Some people like to add oil to their sofrito, and they like to add tomatoes. My sofrito does not have oil and does not have tomatoes. It also doesn't have salt. The salt is used sometimes as a preservative. However, because I make big batches of the sofrito and I freeze it, I find that there is really not necessary to add any salt to my sofrito, but that's a matter of preference for me. So we're going to be using a cubanelle pepper, and this is what they look like. These are they're very available everywhere, so you can find them. I'm also going to be using a red bell pepper, a large yellow onion. I'm going to use half a cup of peeled and cleaned and washed garlic. These are ajicitos or cachuchas, I believe they're called in Santo Domingo or Dominican Republic. I'm going to be using 4 of these. These are fairly large. Now, typically in Puerto Rico, these will be much smaller, but as I said, there's certain ingredients that we just simply don't have access to them, so we improvise. So I'm going to be using these instead. I'm also going to use half of a bunch of culantro. Now, culantro looks like this. They're big leaves. These come from Costa Rica, and I find them on my local Spanish or Latino grocer. But I believe that you can find it just about anywhere these days. If you have not experimented cooking with culantro, if I had to describe it to you, I would say that it's very pungent, and is typically accompanied in our cooking, or at least in my videos, by its cousin, the cilantro, which looks like this. Now, I refer to these as the primitos, as the cousins. However, cilantro is a little bit more mild flavored, as culantro, on the other hand, is more pungent. So it's a bit of a stronger flavor. Now, why use both? Well, I find that in my cooking, for my particular preference. They work very well together, and these two, the cilantro and the culantro, are two ingredients that are definitely in common in most of our sofrito recipes. So we're going to be using half a bunch of a cilantro and half a bunch of a culantro. Now you can add or take some of it. If you want to use less or more, you can always adjust the recipe. For the purpose of today's recipe, I'm showing you a smaller version or a smaller batch of our sofrito. So this is what we're going to be using. Sofrito is something that you can prepare very quickly, especially when you're making a small batch. As you can see, I already have most of my vegetables prepped. I washed them and diced them into smaller chunks. And as a special preference of mine, I like to remove the white membranes from the peppers. And then I cut them into chunks. And for the ajicitos or the cachuchas, or ajies dulces is how we know them in Puerto Rico. What I do is I cut it in half like this, and then I just simply, using my knife, cut out the membrane, and then you just pull out the seeds from it, and it comes right out. And then of course you wash them, and there you have it. That's ready. Now for the pepper, the same thing. The easiest way I find is to cut them lengthwise like so. Okay, and I like to just push on the stem, take that out, and using your hands you could just go ahead and pull out the seeds, and we can shake off the rest of the seeds, wash it, and then you just chop it and you're ready to go. So I have everything ready. The last thing I need to get ready is our cilantro. Now I like to cut them into smaller chunks also, because that just makes it a lot easier to process it. So I begin with the stems, and then I just cut it in 1-inch pieces like so. That's all you're looking for, just to facilitate and help the food processor a little bit. My food processor is about 27 years old, so I take very good care of it, and I use it only for my sofrito and my garlic paste. I use other blenders or processors for everything else. Now, same thing with the culantro. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the stems, and I've already pre-washed all my vegetables and my herbs, so I'm just simply cleaning them or cutting them to size so that it's easier to, once we put them in the blender. So I have all this ready, and now I'm gonna begin by adding the half a cup of the the garlic into the processor. The garlic is the hardest vegetable that we add to our sofrito, and I like my vegetables nicely processed. So I begin with the garlic and process it like so. Pulse it a couple of times. And we just let it go for about 30 seconds to a minute until it's nice and minced. Now, once our garlic is minced, I'm going to show you real quick. This is what it looks like. And I'll put it back in here. Now, everything goes together at once. And we have to mix it anyway, so we can go ahead and add some of the red peppers, some of the cachuchas or ajicitos. We'll put some of the onion in there, some of the cilantro and culantro. Oops, I'm making a mess. Okay, here we go. And we'll go ahead and process it. Now, another thing that can sometimes be different in the sofritos that we prepare is that some people like it chunkier or less chunkier. I've heard of people adding water to it, and like I said in the beginning, sometimes they add oil. I don't add oil, as I said, but it really depends on a matter of preference. I don't like mine too chunky, so I will process it until we get a finer process, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to begin as it's processing, you'll see that it starts to take that nice sofrito color. I like to open it halfway because, like I mentioned, I like my sofrito to be not to be too chunky. So I scrape the sides. Now at this point, you can add the rest of the ingredients to this, but I'm gonna do it in 2 batches. I find that it'll be, you know, a lot easier for me to do that. So I'm gonna blend it one more time so that I can combine the rest of the ingredients and everything that I scraped off from the top. Now, if you let it go for about 30 seconds, you'll get this type of consistency. I'm going to show you real quick. Now, that's about the chunkiness that I like. Now, you can go process it more if you like and, you know, make it a little thinner, but I find that this is just the perfect consistency for my sofrito. Now, I'm going to go ahead and empty this out and continue to do the other half of our sofrito. Very well, I'm almost done with my second half of the batch of the sofrito. And I'm going to open it once more, scrape the sides, push it down, and let's get in there. The smells are amazing. The cilantro, culantro, the onions and garlic. It's just a very refreshing aromas. It's really, it smells very nice in my kitchen right now. So let's go ahead and finish it up. Check it out one more time. I'm gonna let it go a little bit longer, just about 10 more seconds, and we'll be ready to go. My sofrito's ready. I'm going to go ahead and mix this half with the other half right here. Here's our first half of the sofrito. I'm going to grab the rest of it. Okay, I'm going to add it right here to my little bowl. I always like to use either plastic or glass bowls when I make my sofrito. And normally whenever I use my sofrito, I store it also in glass jars or zip bags, and I'm going to show you in a minute what I do with that. And the reason why my preference is to use glass is I don't like to put anything metal. Growing up, my mother was a real stickler about using metal spoons whenever we use our sofrito from her jar, and it just kind of stuck with me. I've been cooking since I was 7, and you know, I picked up a lot of my cooking habits from my mother. And here we have what's the full batch of that small batch of my sofrito. When I come back, I'm going to show you how I like to store it, and as promised, I'm going to give you a few cooking tips on how to use our Sofrito Criollo, or some people refer to it as Sofrito Casero, or simply just Sofrito. For the suggestions on how to use this Sofrito recipe, I encourage you to go in my channel and take a look at some of the recipes that I have that list Sofrito as one of the ingredients in them, like arroz con gandules, picadillo, asopado de camarones, which is a shrimp soup. It's very tasty. And I encourage you to try this. I promise you that once you get started, you're gonna find that this is a flavor profile that you're interested in, and you're gonna find yourself using it in many of your dishes. You can use this in beans, in soups, and of course stay tuned for my future videos, which most of them will include the use of sofrito. In this channel, my purpose is to teach you how a little bit about my culture, a little bit about who I am and what I like to do, and how I became who I am today. And it's just simply a mom that loves to cook for her family. So I hope you try this, and stay tuned for all future recipes. And I'm very excited that we can have these moments together. This whole process took very little time. I would say once you clean all your vegetables and chop them up, it's less than 10 minutes. So, and I have here, I would say about maybe 2.5 to 3 cups of sofrito. Like I said, this is a smaller version or a smaller batch of our sofrito, which is a good idea for those of you who are not familiar with it and want to experiment with cooking with sofrito. So this is actually the perfect recipe for you to get started. Now I'm going to show you how I like to store it. One of the ways I like to store it is in a mason jar, and I use glass mason jars because, like I said, growing up, my mom was a real stickler about using any types of metal or plastic. So I'm gonna break one of her rules. I'm gonna show you in a minute how. So we'll go ahead and just go ahead and place it in the jar. And I'm gonna fill it. Now, because this is a smaller batch, I'm not gonna fill this mason jar entirely, but if I'm gonna be keeping my sofrito in the refrigerator, this is what I will be using. Now I'm gonna show you another way to store the sofrito. I find these sandwich bags with a zip in the dollar store or Dollar Tree. You don't need to get too fancy. Once you're done using them, you're gonna throw them out, and we're just using these for the purpose of freezing them. But I found this size as well. I like to use these sometimes. These are about a cup, so it holds about a cup of the sofrito. But my personal favorite are these. And these little baggies are very convenient because they do have measurements. It goes up to 1 cup. And I like to label them and date them and put it in the freezer. So the good thing about these bags is when I'm ready to use my sofrito, and of course it's frozen, it just facilitates for me to just pull it out, and using a knife I can cut the piece that I need or the measurement of what I'm going to need, and then I can just pop them back in the freezer. So it's very convenient in using these kind of bags. And again, you know, for those of you who want to look for them, I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I just want to show you that I find these to be very convenient. So there you have it. That is my version of Sofrito Criollo or Sofrito Casero. There's many ways that we refer to the sofrito. So for those of you who are going to be experimenting and trying sofrito for the first time, this shrunken recipe is the recipe for you. I hope you try it. And I look forward to seeing some of your comments. Please like, subscribe, and share my videos so that I can continue growing my channel and also continue making these videos for you. The recipe that I showed you yield 1 package of 1 cup and 16 ounces of this mason jar of sofrito. So which is fairly a good amount or good quantity of sofrito for a starter or somebody that just simply wants to try. If you like this video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave your comments down below. I promise you I would answer all my comments. If you have any suggestions or any recipes or anything you would like me to do in this channel, I'm more than open to suggestions. So please send me your comments down below. Remember to give me a thumbs up and share my videos so that I can continue making these videos for you. Until next time, this is Evita at the rhythm of my heart. Buen provecho y hasta la próxima.